I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. The Steelers are getting healthy after the bye. Pat Freiermuth coming back. DeMarvin Leal is coming back. Dan Moore Jr. is coming back. Wait, Dan Moore Jr. is coming back. What about Broderick Jones? We'll answer that right here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday breakdowns, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime, download the GameTime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. As I said before, we're Locked On Steelers podcast. Today we're joined by Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. He's the man. We love having him here on this show. Alan, is a lot of good signs with the Steelers coming back. Pat Freiermuth's coming back. We'll talk about him. DeMarvin Leal's coming back. We'll talk about him. Anthony McFarland's coming back. Probably won't talk about him as much, but Dan Moore Jr. is coming back, and that's great for Dan. He's healthy. But Broderick Jones has got to start, right? Apparently not. If you were in the Steelers locker room, which you were on Monday, what's your take on, well, first of all, explain what Dan Moore Jr. said and get into whether or not you think he still is the starting left tackle on this team.
I mean, Dan said that he was, working with the first team in practice on Monday, and that he's back and feeling healthy. And, he said he was a little bit limited. And he said he doesn't know what's going to happen, basically. So, that's where we're at. I don't know that he is fully healthy. I don't know that he is ready to play. If he is, and I certainly don't know what they're going to do if he is, because I didn't think there was a question in my mind as to what the answer to that was going to be until today and yesterday. And now I'm not so sure.
That's where I'm at. This should be a done deal. Broderick Jones kicked butt against the Ravens. He was shutting down Jadeveon Clowney, who's had a really good year for the Ravens so far. He was looking sharp out there. He was blocking in the run game. It looked like they was figuring things out. But I guess not. Now, here's the thing. This could be a bunch of hoopla about nothing. Dan Moore Jr. coming back. They may be testing him out with the first team just to see how he looks there, because that's where he was. And then Broderick Jones could be the starter. That very, very well could be. He was drafted. Broderick Jones was drafted higher than Kenny Pickett was last year when they moved Kenny Pickett in around week 4. So this could all just be a bunch of hoopla about nothing. But it should not be. Or it should be, rather, hoopla about nothing. It should not be a question. I think Broderick Jones did a good enough job, and he's your left tackle of the future. That's what you drafted him to be. That's what he looked like. That's what he looked like on Sunday as a rookie. Yes, he wasn't completely clean, but you and I both graded him pretty well after that game. I think he did a pretty good job, and that's where I'm at here. This is a hypothetical, but if Dan Moore Jr. goes back in, I personally think that's a mistake by Mike Tomlin. And I get that there's deference and veterans and all this other stuff, but there needs to be a clear passing off point. It's unfortunate for Dan Moore Jr., but such is the nature of this business.
I think it's a mistake, especially because if you look at where the Steelers are in their schedule, there is not an elite edge rusher coming up. Like the big points about why you wanted Dan Moore to start the season was, well, one, he outplayed Broderick Jones in the summer. He did. And then you had those 3. You did not want to give Broderick Jones, you didn't want to feed him to the wolves, right? It was Bosa and Garrett and Crosby the first 3 weeks. And you're like, nah, let the vet deal with those guys, right? It's not. The Rams don't have a good edge rusher. Tennessee doesn't have a good edge rusher. Jacksonville, the other Josh Allen. There's nobody that should scare you in this stretch of the schedule. You're coming off the bye week. This was always, regardless of whether Dan got injured or not, this was always the place that they should have been looking to try to get him in the lineup. So if that was the case, if this was the place that they always should have been looking to get him in the lineup, And now Dan's been hurt, may not be 100%. Broderick Jones played, I think, very well in that game against the Ravens. I really don't get it. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what Mike Tomlin says. But I'm confused if that's the decision, because I don't. Very rarely do the Steelers do something where I'm just like, yeah, I don't see it. Like I just and I unless there's some other explanation, maybe got banged up. I don't know. Like, unless there's some other explanation that I'm not seeing, I think I would disagree with that decision if they go back to Dan Moore.
I mean, to me, this would be, maybe even worse than the Joey Porter situation, where I think Joey Porter Jr. should be getting starting time at outside cornerback, so they can finally push Patrick Peterson inside there. But Broderick Jones, again, you traded up for this guy in the first round. You picked him at 14th overall. They don't even pick that high normally most of the time. So I look at this, and again, it's a hypothetical. This could all be a big smoke screen, and then Broderick Jones is starting. There's also the chance that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers coaching staff just wants to see how Broderick Jones handles this week with, being that guy in that situation. They want to see his maturity in handling it. But for me, this needs to be no more question. Broderick Jones is your starting left tackle unless he's injured, and things have to change after that point. Dan Moore Jr. could very well be ready to be the swing tackle, be moved in at right tackle if Chukwuma Okorafor starts stinking, or if Broderick Jones starts to fall apart. Like if he's missing just regular blocks and getting Kenny Pickett in trouble, pull him out, send Dan Moore Jr. back in, and he'll understand, hey, Rook, you're having a rough day. We're going to put in a guy there that's going to be able to handle the situation. He's a vet. Just get your head together and get ready for next week. That kind of stuff can happen. We see it happen with quarterbacks, with young quarterbacks in the NFL a lot. I think I'm right with you. If the Steelers do this, I am completely on a different track with them. And I'm like, what is going on here? But again, I think this will end up being nothing. I think Broderick Jones will start on Sunday against the Rams. I think that this might just be the Steelers just seeing how healthy Dan Moore Jr. is. Like I said, he might not even be healthy enough to play in this game. And we could be, looking back at this and saying, wow, that was a big nothing burger. But bottom line, he needs to start Sunday. Like you said, this is a Rams defense. Yes, they still have Aaron Donald in the middle, but they're missing so much of the personnel that made them the great defense that won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think it's a very different situation than Porter and Benton, right? You can see the plan with those guys. They play at positions where you can just gradually step up their reps and their responsibility, right? Porter went from playing just dime to now playing a couple snaps of outside to now playing a couple series of outside, and you can see the progression. Same thing with Benton, was just at the nose. Then it was nose in the 3. Now we're seeing the nose and the 3 and the 5, and we've seen him step up in playing time as he's getting more responsibility, and you see the plan. Broderick tackle is going to be an all or nothing proposition. You're either going to start or you're not going to start. It's the same thing it was with quarterback with Kenny Pickett last year. I don't think they wanted to play Broderick Jones yet, but they had to, and he was good. So I don't see why you wouldn't keep playing him like that. If Broderick Jones never gets in that game, maybe he stays on the bench. Like if Dan Moore stays healthy, like I don't think he was playing badly enough that they needed to make a change. But once you've seen what the young guy can do, your hand was forced. Why wouldn't you keep playing him if he keeps playing well? That one it mystifies me.
It would mystify me as well. I think the Steelers are going to make the right decision, and Broderick Jones will be the starter. We'll keep you up to date with that here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I personally think Mike Tomlin will be crazy to do otherwise, unless, like you said, Broderick Jones is hurt, and we just don't know it. But we got to talk about another guy coming back, and that's Pat Freiermuth. I think that's really good news for the Steelers offense if they use him. We'll talk about that issue going forward here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But before we do that, we got to remind you that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. Now, sometimes life is going to be twists of turns, and you're going to have tough times where you need someone to help sort through things so you can be the best you for yourself all throughout your week. That's where BetterHelp Therapy Online comes in, because I've faced plenty of times in my life where I've needed someone to help me sort through a lot of different burdens I'm carrying, a lot of different things I need, questions I have that I don't find answers to, and that's where good therapists come in. And BetterHelp Online Therapy will help you find good therapists, because they will assess your needs and will match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done online, available to people worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. With therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you, and that's why BetterHelp makes it easy and free to change therapists if needed. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. We're also brought to you by DoorDash. If you're missing syrup for your pancakes or just ran out of your favorite coffee creamer, DoorDash Groceries Delivery is here to help you, because you can get what you want, when you want, right when you need it. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver to your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. Want even more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 in value when you use code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Limit time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKEDONNFL. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host with Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, Pat Freiermuth said he vows to play against the Rams on Sunday. And I think that's a good return, even though he hasn't been blocking well for the Steelers. He's another receiving weapon. Deontay Johnson's supposed to be back. It has been reported, the Steelers reported that he was back at practice. So that's a good sign for that. You have Anthony McFarland coming back. The Steelers offense could finally maybe be fully healthy. We got to hear about James Daniels. I'm not sure about him just yet. But Pat Freiermuth being back gives it another weapon for the Steelers, and a weapon that Kenny Pickett, I think, looked pretty good with in the preseason, but then didn't look pretty good with for the regular season. Sure, his first touchdown pass went to Pat Freiermuth, but this is a guy drafted in the second round a couple years back, and right now he is just not being used nearly enough in this offense. If you look at right now, he has what, 8 catches, for 53 yards. He does have 2 touchdowns, but the Steelers need to get him more involved, especially in the middle part of the field. That's where he would be a big asset. Do you think that's something that could be coming for the Steelers? Do you see this as a persisting problem for this offense?
Well, it's new, so I don't see it as a persistent problem, because, it wasn't that way last year. It's a big part of the passing offense a year ago. I don't understand what has happened to, Pat Freiermuth. He's hardly blocking. I've talked about, I think that he should be blocking more, or I'm sorry, less, and running routes more, but he's hardly blocking. It's not like he's been asked to do so much blocking. He's been on the field for 105 snaps. He's run 65 passing rounds. Okay, that's, a lot of those are run plays. So it's not like he's blocking. He's blocking about 6% of the time on passing plays. That's nothing. I'm fine with that.
Right.
And probably most of those they check into because they're reading it's a 0 blitz. So I have no problem with that. But 65 routes, 12 targets. That's the part of it that's the part of it that for me is where is he going that they're not finding him? I don't understand how a guy who I think is a talented receiver, I think he's a pretty good route runner, he's got great hands. How can't they find him more regularly?
Good question.
And is he, is it separation? Is it route concepts? Is it Kenny just not finding a guy? I don't know. I'm not quite sure what it is. I was a little surprised, honestly, that he said he was going to play. I kind of had him pegged to be another week out from this. So good that he's on the front edge of that curve coming back. But they've got to find a way to make that be impactful. I thought Darnell Washington's limitations kind of showed themselves when he played more. Not that he's a bad tight end, but it seemed like the Baltimore really kind of figured out after a while that they're not really going to throw the ball to him. Like he's just not.
They left him alone, but that's another problem. Get him the football when he's open in space. I'm not saying thread it to him on the needle or down the sideline, but when he's wide open in the middle part of the field, just throw him the ball.
Yeah, it was pretty clear that Baltimore by the end of that game was just like, well, we know they're not going to throw to him, so don't worry about covering him. I don't understand really how this keeps happening with this offense. It is not a great offense. I think we all can acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
But this is not rocket science here in terms of being able to get 88 going. Part of the problem is they just simply don't stay on the field long enough as an offense ever to really get anything going. They're always punting the ball. And when they do score, they've scored in big chunk plays. Like we've seen some splash from the offense. We have seen hardly any sustained football. Like that's the real problem here. And that's why everybody's numbers are down. But I think they've got to find a way to get Pat going, and Deontay Johnson will be a huge help to this offense. But it can't just be George Pickens. Like their whole passing offense for the last 2 weeks has just been chuck it up to George and hope. They've got to do better than that.
I agree, and Deontay Johnson can be a big part of that. If he's back, he'll be getting open. He does very well. He's one of the best in the NFL at that. And while he's doing that, teams are going to try to pay attention to him, which means Pat Freiermuth is going to get more one-on-one looks, and you're able to get the ball to him. But you have to get the ball to him, and I think this boils down to Kenny Pickett in these situations, because again, it's not that Matt Canada is calling plays to get Kenny Pickett to not look at Pat Freiermuth. He's open. But the ball has to be fed to him. And you know what? If he's covered, if the defense is such focusing on him that his big body and his big frame can't be a target window, somebody else is going to be open on that play unless there's pressure just coming at your face in less than 2 seconds, which does happen sometimes this year. But this is such an issue that I think that could solve a lot of. You talked about this last week. Easy yards that you don't have to fight for, to grind for. When you get the lineup and he can get open in less than 3 seconds, get him the ball, get your 5 to 8 yards or more, however long it's going to be, but take those shots. And the tight end is usually a good valve to get those kind of yards to.
I think one of the things that might be coming up here is that Matt Canada's talked about he's trying to call the plays that Kenny feels really comfortable with. He's trying to sort of serve the offense up to him on a silver platter in terms of like, all right, these are what you think you're good at. This is what you like. And I think that's one of the reasons we've seen some of these similar concepts keep coming back. A lot of the crossing stuff, a lot of the left rolling stuff. It seems pretty clear that like, that's what Kenny feels comfortable with. Canada's trying to get him going with the throws that he likes. It does not seem to me that Kenny is particularly comfortable with the quick game in the middle of the field. It just does not feel like that's his thing. And I think that when you're talking about using Pat Freiermuth and using Deontay Johnson to get to get easy yardage, that's where it's going to be available to you. Like they just don't run slants. They just don't. I don't know where they installed every route but that one. It's just not in the playbook. I don't know. They don't run any slants. They run very few of kind of option choice routes, which are what tight ends across the NFL live on. If you watch Travis Kelce's film, like every single route he runs basically is one of those.
He's going to find the soft spot of the zone.
Right. Yeah, we get very little of that. And so I think there's just a disconnect a little bit between the talents of the receivers, the talents of the quarterback, and how the play caller is trying to balance those pieces, right? Like it seems like guys are getting left by the wayside in order to try to do what Kenny feels good about, which is okay in theory, but at some point you've got to be able to do more than just like 3-yard outs while you're rolling to your left and 50-50 balls to George. Like there's got to be more to a passing offense than that. They've got to find a way to unlock some more of this stuff. And Freiermuth and Johnson are really the big pieces that have been missing. I think they've got to, if this offense is going to turn around and be even average, those two guys have to play really well the second half of the season.
They do, and they have to be given the chance to be play very well, from the quarterback position there. I'm right with you. You got to find. I think Matt Canada, should have been one of the focuses over the bye, is finding ways to get those easy yards over the middle to those guys. And you know what? If people are stacking up the middle, making it harder for there's going to be that means there's going to be a lot of other things open because you can't cover everything in today's NFL. It's just not happening.
Spread them out too. Like that's the other thing. I
agree.
want more Freiermuth on the outside. Too many condensed looks. They can't run against them, and they're not throwing very well against them either. I think I'd scrap the condensed stuff and start spreading some teams out a little bit. They seem to run better out of the spread anyway, and I think it helps Freiermuth. He's a better route runner outside than he is in line anyway. I think that helps him too.
I think it would help him. I mean, because when he's lining up in line, no one's scared of him as a blocker. And I think that's the thing there is that you're make him an extra wide receiver. Just use him that way, and then you can start doing a lot more creative things that way. You can run your 12 personnel with him and Darnell Washington on the field, and when you have them out there, you have Washington block and Freiermuth run out for routes. That way, you have your sixth protector who can leak out as an emergency guy, and then you have another talented receiving option who's tall, who's big, and can give you some mismatch issues while you still have George Pickens, while you still have Deontay Johnson, and while you still have either Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren. Those are things that I think the Steelers can do better as far as play structure and calling. But again, it won't matter if those guys are open and they're still not getting the football. That has to change moving forward. We'll talk about what might change moving forward with the Steelers on defense. DeMarvin Leal's back from his injury, but the Steelers' defensive front looked maybe the best that it had in the second half against the Ravens. We'll talk about where DeMarvin Leal fits and coming back and how that'll play out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, we got to remind you that this show is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is the app that you can download right to your phone to buy tickets for your favorite events, and it won't be stressful. You can go to GameTime.co as well online, and GameTime will help you find the fast and easy way to buy tickets to all your events, whether they're sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. You get killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have a best price guarantee that can't be beat. Just download the GameTime app right in your phone today. It allows you to book tickets up to the last minute, and even if you're running behind, up to an hour after your event has started. And during that time, you'll still get exclusive flash deals on all the different events that you want in your area. The GameTime app, it gives you the option also to see the tickets and the view from the seats that you're buying. And also, when you see that view, you're also seeing the real price of those tickets. They removed all the hidden fees so that everything's up front, and all it takes is 2 taps of the tickets, and they're yours, and you're ready to go to your event. That's what GameTime does. They make the process to find these tickets so much easier than other places. And get a GameTime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, GameTime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders. Alan, DeMarvin Leal back at practice as well for the Steelers, and that's good news for the defensive line. They need reinforcements. I think they stood up pretty well. But DeMarvin Leal, I think you and I have talked about, we like DeMarvin Leal. We think he's got a real future with this team, being part of this new generation of defensive linemen they're trying to put together with him and Keanu Benton. Benton has been, has looked like the bruiser up front that they drafted him to be. He's that guy that you put 1-3 technique, let him go to work, let him beat people up. But DeMarvin Leal's use is a little bit different. He could still be physical with you, but he can also do so many other things. And I wonder, should they keep trying to do that right now with the way the edge rushers are playing? Because when he moves out to the edge spot, it is a nice little twist to throw in there. But man, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are wrecking games out there. Is this a time where maybe you say, hey, DeMarvin, we know you can do that, but we need you to be right here, 3-5 technique, like in the extra defensive end that's working in the middle of this defense and getting sharper in that role.
I think it depends on how much base defense they're playing. I think when they're playing base defense, he is the most natural defensive end, like 3-4 end that they have. When they get into sub packages, when it's a sub package game, and I expect this game to be a sub package game, I think the Rams will play 3 wide receivers almost the entire game. I don't see him being as useful until you get to a point where you're very comfortable that they're throwing the ball. If you get into dime, it's 3rd and long. I like DeMarvin Leal as a pass rushing defensive tackle.
Sure.
If it's 1st and 10 nickel, though, he gets moved off the point of attack on the inside too frequently. Like, if you're only going to have 2 defensive linemen in there and you're already a little bit small, like nickel's a 4-2 defense, the Steelers are playing stand-up ends that are undersized for defensive ends, and TJ and Alex Highsmith. You're already small at the outside line, at the end position in your 4-2, and you're making your guys stand up, so they're at a little bit of a disadvantage. You can't really afford to be small at tackle too. And he is a little bit small for a 3 tech. And so I think they're better served mixing him in when you feel like it's a good pass rush down, get him in there. But against the run, I think I'd rather have Benton. I think I'd rather have Adams. I think I'd rather have Ogunjobi. I think I might rather have Armon Watts. Like, it's not anything against him. It's just about the way that they can use him. And then the other thing I do really like about him is his ability to be a change of pace at those other positions, where if it's a long drive and you're just getting beat doing the same thing, okay, let's bring get a different look out there. Like, let's do, if you want to throw a curveball, you throw in Leal, whether it's on the edge or whether it's inside. I don't want him to be that guy getting 30 reps there. I want him to be that guy giving Larry Ogunjobi a break, giving TJ Watt a break, giving the team a different look that they have to worry about while a star player is off the field, instead of just being like, it's a backup, don't worry about it. Oh crap, this guy's different. He's not like that other guy. We got to do something. It makes you account for him in a different way.
I agree. The thing about the Steelers defensive front that used to really get people, and it still does sometimes even now, they make it tough for you to predict where guys are coming from. And that's because they have had guys who can move all around. Heck, Cam Hayward's a guy. He could move from zero out to the edge. He could do all the spots. Stephon Tuitt was like that. They could move him all around, and it made it tough when they come out in alignment. Crap, 97 and 91 are like in different spots. We didn't practice that. That means we gotta focus more on communication, being in the right spots, and all those different things. If DeMarvin Leal is ready to do that, I think that can really be a boost for the Steelers defense, because I still think his flexibility is a tool to use and to make it tougher to predict where certain pass rushes are coming from. But it's also going to require, increased chemistry here with his fellow teammates, because when you're moving around, a whole bunch, it's tougher to get as many reps with certain guys that you've relationship with. I talked about this on the Monday episode. One thing with the run defense that had to happen better was I really felt like the run defense needed to show needs to know how to coalesce, and needs how to come together with different run fits. And some of that just takes reps, just takes time. I remember back in 2017, it took time for TJ Watt and Bud Dupree and Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt to gel and know how to be in the right places at the right times, when one stunts, how the other twists, and the different things that they like to do together. And that kind of stuff, it builds over time. But if DeMarvin Leal, second-year player, missed a lot of last year with an injury, it may take more time if he's moving around to get more looks like that the Steelers are certain of. But still, if he does accomplish that, he becomes a big weapon for your defensive front for many years.
Yeah, and I don't think they need him to be like Cam Hayward. I just think they need him to be like himself he's a different kind of player. He reminds me a lot of Brett Kiesel. I feel like that's kind of the more of the mold that the Steelers are looking at when they got him, a guy who's like a big athlete, that gets himself into good positions with his motor and with his athleticism more so than his strengths. And I think you can win with a guy like that. And I really think he's valuable for those AFC North games where you're playing a lot of based defense, the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, and other teams around the league that are sort of similar to that, the Raiders, the the Titans, these teams that play a lot of tight ends that you're going to run the ball. You might see a fullback. I feel like those are the games where you can play an extra defensive lineman, and then being able to play an extra defensive lineman that's occasionally a wild card then becomes a real asset.
I'm right with you. I think that's one of the answers you can start to come up with on defense for what teams like to do in different ways as well. I'll be intrigued to see how they line them up. I also expect that probably by the end of the month, or maybe a little bit after, we start to see and hear news of Cam Hayward's return in this situation. If Cam Hayward does come back, how do you use this defensive line, do you believe, Alan? Because he's going to take time to need to get back up to speed and everything. He won't just come back and just be, all pro Cam Hayward, but you're going to want him in there. You're going to want to keep using Leal, Ogunjobi, and I think Benton as well. And that could create an interesting, question as far as how you deploy this defensive line, with the different looks that they want to give up front.
I'm not sure about like the high end ability, but I feel like if they could go Cam, Larry, Benton, Adams, Leal, like that's a deep group. Am I missing one more there too? Watts and Loudermilk. Like they can really get to 6 deep, I feel like. And we talked about this offseason. This is the trend in the NFL. I don't feel like where you're going to play all these guys is a problem. Where do the Philadelphia Eagles play all their defensive linemen? I don't know. They just play them. Like, it doesn't matter to them. They played all last year with Fletcher Cox as the second team. Like, it didn't matter. Like, they can do that. I think the Steelers are close to having that same kind of depth. And I think that kind of depth is important, especially when you got, an older guy in Cam coming off an injury, sort of chronically banged up guy in Larry Ogunjobi that you don't necessarily want to be playing every snap anyway. I just think the way they're building it fits within the trend of the league and makes a lot of sense.
I think it does make a lot of sense. We'll see if Mike Tomlin makes sense later today at the Tomlin Tuesday press conference, and we'll talk about that on our Wednesday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Maybe he'll answer on the Broderick Jones situation if we get that question to him and he gives us a response that's actually something real and not Mike Tomlin buying time. We'll see how that plays out. He often, if he doesn't want
buying time. I'll just put my wager down right now.
If he does not want us to know something, Mike Tomlin will not tell us. He'll give us a paragraph of lots of Tomlinisms and things and what guys are doing, and then we'll leave there. I'm like, wait a minute, he didn't give us an answer. It's one thing that he does very well. Alan, thanks so much for joining us. He's from SteelersNow.com. Alan, the people who can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
At @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, at PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Having a sale for our subscriptions at SN Plus, 10% off using the promo code Allen10 on an annual subscription. So check that out if you're interested. Get all the best stuff from me, Nick Farabaugh, Derek Bell. I love our team. I think we're doing great work over there. So go check it out. My podcast, Steelers Afternoon Drive, happens on our YouTube page and also wherever you can find podcasts with me and Zachary Smith. And I don't know. We'll see if we can get Carter on this week.
You keep teasing me, man. Stop. You're messing with me now. You're not even messing with your fans. You're messing with me. Stop it. Let me know if I'm coming on. Dang it. Anyways, he's Alan Saunders. Thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning in to us. You can find us on your favorite podcasting apps. You can also find us on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Stay tuned for the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got a lot more coming your way this week. And also, remember, Mike Tomlin speaks at noon like he does every Tuesday. We'll see what he has to say about the Steelers coming out of the bye and if there's any changes going into this Rams game. We'll see you on the Wednesday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast.